Okay, I got some 40-yard shots for you guys today to show you. But first of all, I want to tell you the rifle here, it's a Crosman 2100. Pumped it 4 pumps. And these are clean bore shots. What I mean by that is I clean the bore before I shoot each type of pellet. The reason why I'm doing it this way is to get a sense of how a pellet is going to perform just after a good cleaning. Now there are times when you want to fire several sets so that the rifle can get enough fouling in it to make the pellet more accurate. You'll find some rifles want more rounds fired through them, some want less. But this is just a clean bore test for me, so that way I know if I just quickly clean it, what I can expect right away, right out of the barrel, fresh and clean. I used a 24 power scope. This is not necessary. You can get just as much accuracy with the 12 power scope or even a 9. Typically when you're using 24 power, there's a lot more movement, so you hesitate more. This is at 40 yards. The wind was about 15 miles an hour. The crosshair sway, this is something that I put in here just to let people know some information about when you have the crosshair on your aim point. For instance, this is one of my aim points right here. The sway left to right, I noticed in my scope when I was shooting, was about a 1/4 inch. So in other words, the crosshair sway is human error. One of the reasons why it sways back and forth quite a bit is because the Crosman 2100 has a round base on the pump part of the rifle. And it's a very light rifle, so it tends to kind of move from side to side. So I have to make a better part on my rest that will hold the 2100 more steady so I can take more accurate shots. But for now, this is what I did. The routine I'm using for doing these tests is not only bench rest, but what I'm doing is I'm starting off by oiling the pump. The second thing I'm doing is dry firing 10 shots just to clear the oils out of the barrel after oiling it. And then quick cleaning the bore. And then after that, obviously taking my clean bore shots. So I'm going to read off the clean bore shots to you and tell you what kind of pellet they are and the kind of grouping I was getting. There's some human error in this. There's a little bit of wind in this, so there could be a lot of variables of why the shots ended up like this. But I think it ended up pretty darn good for 40 yards, if you ask me. So coming out of a plastic pumper rifle that's nothing more than about probably $70 online, so, or even $60 some places. So anyway, we got the 7.33 grain round nose air arms pellet. We're doing 1.5 inch groups here, and I'm doing 5 shots per group. And just to let you guys know, if I did several sets of 7.33, you could have different results. So if you want to check one pellet that's your favorite, it's good to do at least, you know, like 5 sets of 5. Don't always trust your first set, and you'll see why later in this video, why you don't trust your first set. And then right here we have the 787 round nose express air arms. This is a 5-shot group, and these are about $16.99 for 500, and there's good reason why they're more expensive. They're definitely a lot more accurate pellet. There's more quality control in this pellet. It looks identical to the Air Arms 7.33, but I found that in some rifles that it does kind of group a little bit tighter. So we got a 3/4 inch grouping on that one. Then we have the JSB 8.02 wad cutter. This is yellow box wad cutter, 1 1/8. The 7.33 wad cutter JSB right here. And we got the 10.34 grain air arms round nose right here, doing about 1 inch. And if you notice right here, 1 5/8, the 7.33 wad cutter. But what I did is I put 1 of 2 right here because I wanted to improve this. I knew that it was a good match grade pellet, so I wanted to take a second chance on it. So I did, and this is what I came up with, a better group. So that's why I'm saying you should actually fire, a few sets of 5 to see, what pellets you're going to use in your rifle. So anyway, oh, by the way, this is 4 pumps. Some of you might want to know, how many pumps is this? 4 pumps. So here we got the 7.33 grain wad cutter here, but notice that the group is much tighter. We got it 3/4 inch. So we went from 1 5/8 down to 3/4 inches here. It might have been me. It might have been several other different things. But being at 40 yards and stuff, it's going to be much more difficult, and that's why you need to take more sets. You can't just trust the first set. Same thing with all these other pellets down here. This is the 5.56 trophy pellet. This is an alloy pellet. These ones are H&N, I believe, field target trophy. So we got 1.5 inches on that one. Here we've got the 6.48 grain. These were actually, I think they were Kodiaks. I'm not sure what the can said on them, but there was a time when these were Kodiaks, but you can call them Barracudas also. These are the alloy pellet version of H&N, I think, or Beam and Kodiaks. And then down here you got the, these are called Coal Phoenix pellets on Pyramid Air. You can look them up, but we got 1.5 inch group there. Now, a lot of you seeing the 1.5 inch groups here, this isn't too bad. Remember, we're at 40 yards, so that's a long journey for a pump rifle. And especially for something that's mostly plastic, except for the zinc die casting receiver. I think it's made out of zinc. And then, I don't know if I showed you this one or not, but this is the 8.26 JSB wad cutter right here. So that's that one right there. So anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, maybe I'll lay down a quarter, and I'll show you these rifles too. I'll lay down a quarter and a dime just so you got an idea of how far it is and what it looks like with like a quarter and a dime. So I'll just lay a quarter right here for that one. So you have to admit, for 40 yards, even a spread like that isn't too bad. You got a 25-cent piece right there. And then we'll take a dime, see what happens here. Yeah, look at that. Not too bad for 40 yards, huh? All right. And a little wider here. Okay, and then I'll show you the second one here. I will show you the rifle too, actually. We'll do that. So you notice the Coal Phoenix, if we had that one right there coming in a little closer, that wouldn't be too bad. Alright, so now what I want to do is show you the Daisy 953. I took some 40-yard shots with it was a 7.33 grain JSB. I'll show you that right now. And then I'll read it off to you. It's 40 yards, Daisy 953. 3.5 mil down, that's from my crosshair, that's for my information. 7.33 wad cutter. 3/4 center to center for 5 shots here. And this Daisy 953 is a real performer. It will do this pretty consistently. If you look at the dime there, that'll cover up almost 4 of the shots that were fired there. So there's a dime right there. And the starting velocity, I cronied it at 400 feet per second at muzzle, and at 40 yards we're 254 feet per second. Ballistic coefficient of 11, that's about our .010. That is pretty typical for a wad cutter. Usually wad cutters are in between .010 and .01415, somewhere around there, depending on the type of wad cutter. So, but you have to admit, for 40 yards, the pellet's only going 254 feet per second, and it can still hold a pretty tight group there. So typically what happens when you run out of velocity is you'll start to get a waterfall effect where the pellets start dropping in a straight line. And I don't know if you can see it happening here a little bit, but still not too bad for 40 yards. So you have to admit, here's a dime again. But eventually the pellet runs out of twist and speed. So that's one thing people have to realize too. It's like throwing a football. You can only get a spin to go so long, and then when it reaches the end zone, sometimes you'll see a football tumble. Well, same thing with the pellet. It can get too slow and not have any twist and start to tumble a little bit. So anyway, most pellets are speed, well, especially wad cutters are kind of speed fussy and distance fussy and stuff like that. So you have to change out your speeds and your distances and stuff like that. With pump rifles, you can do that because you have variable amounts of pumps. I wanted to show you the Crosman 2100 shots for the Daisy pointed pellet, or not the Daisy, but the Beeman pointed pellet. Had some wider groups. This one wasn't too bad, 1.5 inches, but we got 2 inches here and 1 3/4. So the cheaper pellets will sometimes group, and then other times it won't. And they're cheaper pellets, but still, I would say at 40 yards, 1.5 inch groups, I would say that's still good for 40 yards. I mean, 1 inch groups at 25 yards isn't bad, but when you start doing 1.5 at 40 yards, or even 2 inches at 40 yards, that's not too bad for a plastic pumper air gun or whatever. So anyway, we got them. Now I'll show you the rifles, and I'll show you the scopes and stuff like that. So here's the Daisy 953, and what I've got on here is a bug buster. This is a 3-9x32 bug buster scope. The parallax setting on this goes down to 3 yards, which is really, really close distance, but you can have a full 9 power zoom and have a perfectly clear picture at that close distance. But this is the Daisy 953 with that scope, the bug buster. Then we got the Crosman 2200. These ones will go toe-to-toe with each other sometimes at 40 yards. But so here's the Crosman 2100 with the BSA 6 to 24x40 scope on this one. And the receiver here is like a zinc die casting. So these are more accurate than people think they are. And I'm going to show you a comparison between this one and the Daisy 953. Sometimes these go toe-to-toe with each other. Now, it wasn't necessary for me to set this on 24 power for these shots. If I would have went 9, that would have been fine, and I would have still probably came up with the same results. So sometimes there's a myth sometimes out there that magnification makes you more accurate. Sometimes it doesn't, because what happens is when you're looking in your crosshair, the more magnification you have, like for instance, if you're focusing on 9 power, you might see something like this. just a little sway. But if you're focusing on 24 power, you might see something like this. And what happens is it makes you hesitate because you can't stay straight enough, so you don't take the shot. And you hesitate more and more. So that's one of the reasons why sometimes dropping off your magnification is actually better than going for full-blown 24 power. The reason why I wanted to try 24 power is I've never tried it before, believe it or not. And some people would say, well, geez, you got a 24 power scope. Why wouldn't you have done that before? And that's pretty much the reason why I didn't, is because on 9 power, I know for a fact now that on 9 power, this rifle will perform as if it would on 24 power. So don't feel bad if you only got a 9 power scope. You can still hit accurately at 40 yards. So, but anyway, so you got the Daisy 953 here, and they're both pumpers, and you got the Crosman 2100. So let me show you the best shot groups for these once again, and you've already seen them, but I'm going to compare them one more time. Well, it's between the 7.33 grain wad cutter and the express pellet. Let's just go with the express round nose here for the 2100, and I'll lay that down here, put a dime on it, and then I'll bring in the 953 one. So 953 is designed as a 10-meter target rifle. It doesn't have a Walther barrel in it, but the Daisy 753 and 853 does have a Lothar Walther, but the 953 doesn't have one. But even though it doesn't have a Walther barrel in it, you can tell just by this sheet of paper here that it's got some good accuracy. So here you got the Crosman 2100 and you got the Daisy 953. And see, this is what I mean about going toe-to-toe with each other. The only thing I have to figure out on the Crosman 2100 now is I want to show you what I'm talking about keeping it steady, because I think it could be even more accurate than it is now, and maybe even keep up with the Daisy 953 and stuff like that at longer distances. Well, actually 40 yards, because the Daisy 953, anything past 40 yards I don't think would be good for it, because it's such a low velocity one pump rifle. But you see how it's kind of rounded on the bottom there, this Crosman 2100? It's kind of rounded here, so when you put it on the bench rest, or actually I got a pistol rest, and then I've got another piece that I attach to this to get it steady. But what it does is this rifle tends to rock a little, and I'll show you. And it's very, very light, whereas the 953 is a lot heavier. But what happens is when you got it on the rest, it kind of goes like this just a little bit, because it doesn't have that flat base. It's kind of rounded. Whereas the Daisy 953 has got that weight in the barrel, so maybe the Crosman, you guys could find out a way to make it more flat on the bottom, customize it, and put a weight on the end of the barrel, like the Daisy 953. It's got that weight. And then notice that it's got a more flat base right here, and that sits into the rest a lot better when I'm doing bench rest. So if I can tackle that problem with the Crosman 2100, I could go back out there at 40 yards and take some more shots and see if I could do much better that way. So once again, we're at 40 yards. Let me get this sheet one more time. I want to show you something here. I'll show you something. Yeah, so once again, 40 yards. One thing to remember typically is 25 yards. Usually the standard, the hunting standard, for 25 yards is usually 1-inch groups. It's kind of like the unofficial hunting standard. So for instance, if you take a quarter here and you put it right here on this, it kind of meets the hunting standard for 40 yards, even though 25 yards is where it starts. So you have to admit, from 25 yards going out to 40 yards now, still within 1 inch, that's pretty dang good. So anything that's within, 1 to 1.5 inches, you're going to hit it for sure, for the most part, with this Crosman 2100 with almost any pellet. So, or any good match grade pellet, or good quality pellet, I should say. So anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. Excuse me. All right. And then if you wanted to use, the cheaper beam and pointed pellets, you could use these for, maybe 25 yards, 30 yards, they'd be good. Something like that. But you notice that the groups kind of widen up a little bit and they kind of go astray. So they're cheap pellets. They'll do good sometimes, but you want a pellet to do consistent groups, at least under 1.5 inch almost all the time at 40 yards. That would be ideal, because everybody wants a tighter group, and that's what you're shooting for. So, and then once again, here's the DZ 953. There's a dime. But anyway, thanks a lot for watching, you guys. I've had this, I've had Crosman 2100s for many, many years, probably decades. And I don't have my old one, but I've had pumpers for quite a long time. Back in the 80s, I had a DZ 880. I still got one today. And then a Crosman 2100. Them have been around for quite a while. Crosman 760. This one has been around for, I don't know, maybe a decade or so, something like that. But yeah, the DZ 853, 753, 953, you'll find them sometimes online on reviews, and you hear about these rifles like with the Canadian marksmanship programs, 10-meter indoor school programs for shooting, and usually they don't have a scope. They have peep sights and stuff like that, and they do 5 sets of 5 targets, and then they have scores where they score their 5 sets of 5 or whatever. But yeah, Canadian marksmanship program, stuff like that. Well, anyway, thank you very much for watching the video, you guys.